Hello everybody and welcome to more Bandit Survivor, but just with a little bit less effort. And today we're going to be talking about Survivor UK Week 4 Power Rankings with the 11 remaining contestants in the game, and also giving my thoughts on the season. So really, and I've seen this going around online quite a bit, is that a lot of people have been saying that Survivor UK is essentially Survivor for Dummies, and while they wouldn't obviously use those words, it is something that I feel like to a certain extent can encapsulate what this season is offering the viewer, where it does feel very much like a watered down Survivor season, as even seasons like Australian Survivor 2016, Survivor New Zealand 2016, which again I talked about before, isn't even my cup of tea of a Survivor season. At least they did have more interesting rounds, and I feel like the editing that went into some of the blind sides, like the Tony blind side or the Izzy blind side in New Zealand 2016 or in Australian Survivor 2016, obviously we had Phoebe's incredible run pre-merge. And it just feels like, apart from the Rachel blindside, we haven't really got that good tension. It feels like a lot of the stuff is predictable. It seems like it's premeditated, what the editors are trying to tell us. And you can kind of see a lot of the dynamics a mile away, as well as the fact that the gameplay does seem quite stagnant. Now, I feel like coming into a Season 2 of this, or Series 2, I've got to start saying series now, I'm back in the UK. I feel like there are obviously issues that are being addressed by the community that they should take on board, and also I feel like some of the issues like the editing can be resolved. Other things like the casting, I feel like they need to cast more game knowledge, just an understanding of Survivor or even social strategy shows, because again I feel like that, and I don't think many people would argue with me, has been probably the most lacking aspect in this kind of season, is having a lot of people that are willing to play a very socio-strategic game. But nevertheless, we have got 11 people to rank and 2 eliminations in this round, so let's get into it. At number 13, of course, we had Jess, and Jess is a very unfortunate boot, someone that I did have very high in my power rankings last week. In fact, even when I started my power rankings, Jess was constantly in the top 5, someone that was getting a lot of very good content, and really now seeing her edits and seeing her being booted 13, I feel like she gets into one of these trajectories, kind of like a Kelly Wentworth in San Juan del Sur, or Natalie Kate in Co Wrong, even a Ali in HHH, if you will, where she's kind of one of these younger females that have a very highlighted social game, and the edit props them up as someone that, if they were able to make it to emerge, would be able to thrive, but are just cut short because of a swap. And again, I feel like she's in a very similar boat. She is a very good social player, and kind of like Shawnee from Australian Survivor, really plays into that social element with the likes of a Doug and a Pegleg seemingly wanting to work with them. And I feel like if they were more willing to throw Shy under the bus and actually entertain the idea of a flip, then that could have been something that came into fruition, as we see that Doug and Pegleg were willing to get out Shy. And again, another thing that's talked about a lot in the community is if this wasn't as physical of a season, again, I feel like at this point, this has got to be one of, if not the most physical seasons ever, where all the challenges are just physical. A puzzle has only just came into fruition in episode 7, and again, it's probably the most physical puzzle you could ever do. So again, I feel like she was just harmed because of that aspect, and just in general, a lot of the females and Ren were harmed because, again, a man's just naturally going to be more physical than the average woman, and it kind of allowed a lot more people to be able to digest the fact that Jess was a very easy boot on a season like this. But of course she does have some negatives. I mean, she wasn't able to act on her strategic inclinations, where she does identify, I mean, she even calls it in the confessional where they're going to blindside Nathan and Shy and Lawrence are going to flip, and yet she doesn't really do anything about that. She seemed to be playing a pretty by the numbers game with little risk. I feel like if she were to make it to emerge, she would just stay Calaton strong with very little agency in her game, which is a bit of a worry if we were to see a Jess 2.0. But again, we also have her questionable strategy of asking her tribe mates on Calaton what they should do if Pegleg and Doug both have idols, which seemed like a bit of a weird strategy, considering again that was essentially her trying to put the vote onto one of them in a situation where she even said herself, I don't want to be the person that's taking the fall for this. But again, pretty mixed with Jess. I feel like some of the factors that she displayed were good, but overall I think in Survivor UK history, if it continues being a franchise, I think she's going to be largely forgettable as the time goes on. And then at number 12 we do have Shai, the final pre-merge boot, and Shai has some positives. Again, he was a physical asset. I do wonder if Shai would have had the survivability that he did have if this was like a Survivor US season with its challenges, where again he was a very good physical asset on the tribe. He was very muscular, so that allowed him the ability to survive votes that debatably he shouldn't have if it were to be a less physical Survivor season. And something else that I do have to give Shai credit is that he is a good strategic thinker, and I feel like on most seasons I would trust him to make his optimal move. He is someone that identified that he needed to get to the swings, dug and peg leg, something that Jess and Nathan didn't even understand, and as negative of an edit as he gets, he is in the middle with Lawrence despite all the negativity. And I feel like Shai, again, kind of like Jess, where I feel like she would have benefited with a less physical season. I feel like if Shai were to be, as I talked about in the start of this video, on a more strategic cast with people that have actually got good amounts of Survivor knowledge and are willing to play the game a little bit more, then I feel like he would have fared a lot better, where it just seemed like a lot of people were just willing to follow the status quo, weren't really willing to rock the boat, and that was very unfortunate for a guy like him who wanted to make big moves. Negatives, of course, is that, as we've seen from the entire season, he seems to be very poor socially with the wider majority. I do think that if it's key one-on-one relationships with the likes of a Lawrence or even a Nathan, I think Shai is quite good. I think he is openly too strategic, and then that ties into the fact that I think overall just his threat management is a bit lacking. But again, those are factors that I feel are more adjustable than Jess's at the time being. I feel like that just allows a little bit of self-reflection for Shai, and he is someone that I would be interested in seeing a return from, just because you always know that he's going to be a strategic thinker and he's going to provide a lot of value to the cast in that aspect. But we have 11 people left on this list, and at number 11 we have someone that was at the bottom of my power rankings last time. He hasn't changed, and that is Lee. And Lee is someone that, I mean, it's really weird for episode 7 and 8, where we don't actually get, from my opinion, that many character moments. Again, we have the big one in the letters from home, but I feel like that's more so a net positive for most people, which kind of just neutralizes itself out. I mean, I can tell you about all the positives of the letters from home, but I feel like there's only 3 people that didn't get information really regarding their background from letters from home, and 2 people that got kind of standout moments that I would rather talk about than saying about every single person's background, because again, it's just going to be very repetitive about me saying, oh yeah, that's a positive. So yes, Lee does get positivity from the letters from home, but a lot of people do, so I'm not really sure if that's a big positive that I can really attribute to just him. And he again has negatives, where really the big thing that Lee is involved in this episode is his argument with Christopher, where again, I've said in my recap, I would have sided with Lee in this debate, where I feel like Christopher should have told Lee about it, should have included him in the plan. Lee seemed to be willing to throw the challenge to be able to get out of Lenina. He was agreeing with Christopher, just not the way he did it, which then caused this blow up when Christopher initially wasn't willing to see Lee's side, but instead we get these confessionals from Christopher in the debate saying about how it's Lee's way or the highway. We have Ashley, who even is in this mediator role, saying about how Lee is knocking Christopher and is making personal attacks. And again, in spite of what I think objectively, Lee was very clearly meant to be the villain and the person worst perceived in that exchange, even though I don't think Christopher is really supposed to be received that well in the exchange. I feel like it's even worse for Lee. And also we have him being presented as the likes of self-righteous in the argument with Christopher, and there is a lot of emphasis on Lee constantly interrupting Christopher, calling him stupid. So again, I just don't think that this is the edit they're going to give to a winner. Even for a first season with weird editing like Survivor UK, I don't think they're going to be this crazy, so I've left them at number 11. Now at number 10, and to be honest, this is a subcategory of individuals where I do think their edit is as negative as Lee's, the thing is that these are the three people that I feel didn't get as standout moments from their letters at home, and as a result I put them in the 10 to 8 bracket, and the person at the bottom of that bracket is someone that isn't as negative as Lee, but he's getting there, and that is Lawrence. And if you were to put a gun to my head, and if you were to say that I had to pick one of these 11 people to be the merge boot, I would say Lawrence. It seems like Lawrence is just being set up for that, and I'll explain the dichotomy in a moment. But firstly, some positives with Lawrence is that he gets more strategic content, kind of like last week, where he gets to outline him working with Doug and Pegleg. He says that they're good workers and people that he can trust, and that stays resolution in episode 7, but obviously doesn't work out in episode 8. He does also get his way by eliminating Jess, but he does lose Shy in episode 8. So again, a tale of two halves really for this week for Lawrence. The issues is that it's a really bad look to have all this content saying I don't think we're a misogynist, making fun of Leilani after the challenge, calling the girls naive. That's just not a good look. Again, he is a massive social pariah after losing Shy. When you really look at him in the edit, who has Lawrence got to go to? Because he's lost his number one ally in Shy. He has no other defined relationships apart from Tanu and Christopher. And those two relationships can be argued as circumstantial for both Tanu and Christopher knowing about Ren's idol in the situation. So really, when I look at the defined relationships that Lawrence has, he's pretty much got no one, and I feel like he is someone that the Laninas and the Calatons could come together to be able to pick off and kind of add to the fluidity of the season. He's seen as someone that is expandable on both sides, so I do very much worry for him in that aspect. And again, just the overall theming of the season is very icky to me, kind of the sexism and misogyny underlying theme. I just don't really like how much the editors have lent into it. It makes it a kind of dark viewing experience, but yeah, again, I don't think that Lawrence, because of this edit, is going to be winning the game. And on number 9, someone that, again, don't really have that much to talk about, but what's new, and that is Hannah, where, to be fair, one positive is that they get content acknowledging they were blindsided in the last vote. We do get content episode 7 talking about them having to get back into the game without Ren, but there are some issues. I mean, firstly, as we talked about last week, her relationship with Ren just wasn't even discussed. They are very under-edited, probably the most under-edited character in the final 11. We really don't know anything about them, their backstory. And they also don't really get to explain why they're working with Lenina, but when they're in the chats with them throwing the challenge, despite being blindsided. And I feel like if they were going to go with a winner arc for Hannah, they would lean more into her explaining why, in spite of being blindsided with the Lenina, she's involved in these conversations. But I feel like ultimately she is just going to be someone that, if anything, is just going to be a simple vote out and kind of use the round where Hannah's booted to be able to build up other people in the edit for maybe a late game. Again, I don't think that she is going to be a super early boot at the merge. I could see her making a semi-decent run, but I don't think she is endgame material, and so she lands here at number 9. And the final person that I feel like didn't get that great content from the letters at home is Matthew. And to be fair with Matthew, there again are a few positives to him as an individual, where he does get a pretty notable underdog mention. He's chatting to Tanuki and the tribe shelter about how he felt there were millions of Laninas and now they can come back, and he also is displayed as positive throughout the edit, such as saying I love this tribe during the disc challenge. And I feel like that is the one saving grace of Matthew's edit, is it is a very positive one, and I feel like that does help him out in a season where obviously people have got more negative portrayals. But I mean, come on, let's look at his edit. I mean, it's a really poor edit from Matthew this week. I mean, there's nothing much to say about him. Would he have been voted out if Leilani went back to Tribal Council? I'm starting to think with the conversations that they had that maybe so to break up him and Tanuki. And my biggest issue and what's kind of damning about Matthew is his real lack of strategic content, where really there's nothing that I can see that is redeemable about him as an individual with the strategic content on this season. His pre-season confessional about getting people to underestimate him and quote-unquote yank his chain just hasn't came into fruition, and considering that we're now halfway through the season, I really doubt that it is going to be seeing this massive payoff like potentially some people were thinking could happen in the season. So because of that, I am going to rank him here at number 8. But now number 7, people that at least I know a good bit about their backstory due to their involvement with the letters at home. They did get a sizable chunk of information, and I feel like it was a very important time just before the merge to be able to establish the main characters going in. The person that I feel like is the least out of those 7 is Nathan. And Nathan is definitely seen as a good guy between them and Shy plus Lawrence, so I feel like, again, a bit more of a positive edit compared to Lawrence and Lee, so that's good for him. We have a relation set up with Doug and Pegleg now, where he will back them to the end of time, and again, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I feel like with the individuals that we've seen having these notable established connections, I feel like to a certain extent, again, I don't think it would run the entire season, but a core group that I could see coming together is Nathan, Tanuki, Christopher, Leilani, Doug and Pegleg. There's a lot of intermingling between those groups. There's a lot of cross-season connections that have been established, so that's something very interesting. And also he has got probably the most defined relationship on Calaton with himself and Tanuki that will blossom likely coming into the merge. And again, I feel like he could set himself up to be in a merge situation and align with some people from the Lenina 2.0 tribe. But he does actively say he doesn't care about if he goes out, just as long as they do Shy first, which I can understand from Nathan's perspective why he would say something like that to Doug, but I feel like it's kind of damning that that has been shown in the edit as essentially his outlook, that I don't care if I don't win the game, I just want this person that I don't like out first. I don't think that's a very good thing to bolster a winner off. He has very poor strategic awareness, not recognising that Lawrence and Shy will flip on him. He has been identified several times now by a physical threat, and coming into the merge, it is a big worry for him. As you're about to see, as you're probably seeing through this list, a lot of the women in the top half or around the half stage mark and beyond, because what's interesting about these physical seasons is pre-merge a lot of these women do get eliminated, but then with the merge, those strengths that are established in physicality, in being strong, and being good at challenges now become weaknesses. We saw in the likes of Australian Survivor Champions versus Contenders 2, a very physical season, where the merge was 8 men and 4 women, that for the first 4 rounds of the game, it was just men getting eliminated. And they actually managed to tie up the numbers. So I feel like this is a situation that could happen where the men that were kind of safe due to their physicality now realise it's a target on their back. And he also is less edited than his duo partner in Tanuki, which, again, a lot more of the potential content in the previous tribe went to Tanuki. I feel like, again, coming into the merge, probably if the trajectory is going to be continued, that a lot more of the content is going to go towards Tanuki. So I have him here. Now, number 6, someone that is kind of floating around the middle. Again, has never been super high on my list, but not too low, and that's Ashley. And again, like everyone else, she gets positive letter content, but the thing that kind of sets her apart from the other individuals that just get to talk about their backstory, she does get a wrap-up scene talking about what the letters mean for the Lena tribe, and I feel like that is a good piece of content that I can identify is a positive for Ashley that no one else gets. And she is established as a figure that is trying to get Lee and Christopher to work together. Again, kind of this positive mediator figure that is more present in the edit than Hannah. Problems is again, I don't know any of her relationships outside of Christopher, and it's really allowed me to recontextualize that second round of the game, where initially I thought they would be shielding Ashley from the edit and trying to make her and Rach seem less close than what they were, so that it allows Ashley to show off some of the other bonds she's created. But we haven't really seen that, where again, outside of Christopher, I don't really know who she's aligned with. It seems like her edit is very dependent on the success of Christopher, and that makes me very worried about her being a side character and someone that is seen as expendable in the edit. But on to number 5, and number 5 and on are people that I feel like have got positivity, have got a pretty decent landing spot coming into this merge. And at number 5, the person at the bottom of this bracket is Leilani. And if I'm going to be brutally honest, I have obviously gone up in my estimations with Leilani, but I still don't know how she wins the game. If anything, the past week is kind of solidified in my mind. She's going to be a losing finalist, where again, lots of positive content. She gets to outline them missing their boyfriend and the struggles of the game. They have relationships set up with Tanuki and Christopher, showing off social versatility, how she can connect to the original Calatons and the original Laninas. She bashes on Shai on his boot round, which I think is very good, considering that Shai is this individual that's seen as very negative in the edit. We have her getting a lot of positivity, telling off the guys for voting out Jess, and even said she would have been useful on the balance beam challenge, again making her seem like this individual that is getting retribution and is telling off the guys for something that they did that was wrong. We have a very clear theme in their character where they're now established as being an underdog and proving everyone wrong, so I do like that coming into the merge for her. We do have potential foreshadowing for her working with Calaton members, such as stepping on the Calaton map before the challenge, her referencing Calaton members, and I think that that could go some ways. Again, Calaton are down in the numbers, but potentially could be setting her up a few rounds into the merge. And talking about the merge, considering that the pot balance challenge is actually a challenge that favours individuals that aren't too muscular. Again, Tina from Blood vs. Water won it. Shawnee from Australian Survivor Champions vs. Contenders won it. She is an individual that would stereotypically do very well in the pot balance challenge, as well as the fact that we've got so much content surrounding her being good at the challenge in the edit. I feel like she is someone that is primed to win that challenge. The issue is that a lot of her content with Tanuki or Christopher is explained through them rather than her. Again, I remember the episode 8 kind of moment where she's talking to Christopher and Christopher gets to explain a lot of things from their perspective comparative to Leilani, and I feel like overall, again, our edit is giving someone that kind of goes through this journey, is sort of able to have this story and this resolution but isn't able to pull it out in the end. There is also that underlying bit of negativity from last week, which again I feel like is really bad. I don't see why they would ever include that in a winner edit. But because of her positivity, again, I can't rank her too low. She's at number 5. Now at number 4, someone that just keeps rising up on this list, and that's Pegleg. And I said last week that episode 5 and 6 was going to be integral for Pegleg, and all the negatives that I thought that would happen to Pegleg have kind of been resolved. Again, this season is super weird with its editing. It's kind of reminiscent to Survivor 41 or Australian Survivor 2016, where they kind of just introduce storylines, don't need to drop them, and some of the storylines feel very rushed, like we're told about them last minute, and some of them just don't even have full resolution. So I was very worried about Pegleg's constant talk about observing while Doug was seen as doing a lot more, but he was the more safe of the duo, and he comes out of this episode with a lot of positivity, so I have to rank him high, to be honest. And he is seen as a hard worker by Lawrence and Shai. He has a zero to hero arc with Doug, where progressively through week 4 they get to talk about being the bottom, then on the middle, and then really end up on top after the round, where if it was a 10-man merge, they have no chance of being targets coming into that Calaton 2.0 third tribal council, where it's going to be Nathan versus Lawrence, where more than likely they take out Lawrence and keep Nathan for the 10-man merge. He gets out his target in Shai while keeping in the swing position. He has a lot of strategic content outlining game positioning. He has some strategic content acknowledging his game positioning. He has Doug as his closest ally. Doug literally says Pegleg is my closest ally, so that's great. The problem is that I feel like a lot more of his potential content goes to Doug, and Doug gets a lot more strategic credit in the edit. We see that Doug's the one that's saying, Jess, if you want to tell us a name, then that's fine. We have Doug explaining their situation of being in the swing and trying to get Nathan involved. And that isn't to say that Pegleg is absolutely nothing, of course not, but it is noticeable that Doug gets more of the content than Pegleg and more of the credit, and overall is just a bigger screen presence. But again, I can't deny that Pegleg is someone that is positive in the edit, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a trajectory for a winner, where again, the top 4 I feel like are people that have had pretty positive edits, can't really knock them too much, and are people that are very well situated. So Pegleg, again, I feel like he is going to come into the merge and he's going to be very well positioned with the likes of Doug. He's going to reunite with Lee. He has pretty good relationships with other people on the Lanana tribe. He also has Nathan that's on his side, so he is someone that I could see thriving. Now at number 3, someone that has gone up on this list just because of the fact that some negativity that they received last week didn't really matter, and that is Doug. And Doug, again, he's back up in the number 3 spot, where he gets Pegleg on his side, despite Pegleg saying he felt betrayed last week. Again, it was weird by how we got that one confessional by Pegleg saying that he didn't trust Doug, and he felt betrayed, only for that to just not matter now this week. He has lots of strategic insight into his positioning on the Calaton tribe. A strategy that I really love, and I really tell people if they're going on to these social strategy shows, just say yes to everything. He stays in the swing. He has no one pissed off at him, which is very impressive in a swing position, where I feel like Lawrence is going to be more annoyed at Nathan rather than them two, especially if Lawrence is expecting the merge to be a 10. He is someone that is going to try to throw Nathan under the bus rather than try to get back at Pegleg and Doug. We have a very clear relationship set up with Christopher, who had nightmares about him. But there is one problem, and that he gets 2 votes at the episode 7 tribal council in spite of being a big physical asset. So the fact that the tribe, down in numbers innately, are willing to vote him out over the likes of a Pegleg is a bit worrying for me, and could potentially lead to the fact that they are starting to see him as a threat coming into the game. He is someone that is called out as Nathan is playing a good game at Tribal Council, so it is a little bit of a worry. Also, his idol has expired, which again was just weird that again it was only 3 Tribal Councils, not the 3 Tribal Councils he attends, like an Island of the Idols, but hey ho, he's here at number 3, pretty good at it, but again I feel like the number 2 people have got more consistent content and are going to have a lot more versatility. Now number 2, someone that has been number 1 for all these weeks, and I finally had to drop him just a smidge, and that is Christopher. And I feel like there's a real argument for Christopher and Doug actually swapping spots, where Christopher could be number 3 on my list, but I feel like over the weeks, I feel like Christopher has got a lot more versatile content. He's got a lot more content talking about both his social and strategic game, so that's why I kind of put him here, even though I will admit that this week wasn't the best for him. The thing is, we're clearly supposed to side with him in the fight between him and Lee. He's even supported by Ashley, who's seen as this neutral figure, and yes, like, he was very over the top in the way that he was throwing the challenge, and I wouldn't say that he comes off positively in his argument with Lee, but I don't feel like there was going to be much of a way to avoid that. I feel like he actually got more of a positive at it than he maybe should have deserved, and even though the challenge, again, he's lying down the ground, he's doing cartwheels, it could be argued he's getting a dodo at it. I just feel like with the editors, there was no way they weren't going to include that in the show anyway, so I don't know how much weight I put on that. He has lots of relationships set up. Again, Leilani, Doug, Ashley, Lee, potentially even Lawrence if that comes into fruition, so that's good. We get his rationale for throwing the challenge both in episode 7 and 8, which is strategic insight, and also talks about his game awareness of the merge and wanting to get a Calaton out. He has a consistent edit that outlines his social and strategic game. So overall, in spite of his flaws, and the number 1 person just having less flaws now across the season definitively, he still is pretty good in my book, so I put him here at number 2. But not number 1, someone that has finally surged up to the number 1 spot, and that's Tanu. And I've always been positive on Tanu, but it's always just been that little issue at the back of my mind about the complex tribe theory that has kind of worried me. Or for anyone that doesn't know, complex tribe theory is basically the tribe that gets a lot more of its relationships established, a lot more of the dynamics and the group origins explained, and I think it was very clear between Calaton 1.0 and Lanina 1.0 that there was the Leilani's that were getting the more complex tribe theory, which isn't a death sentence. I mean, Erica from Survivor 41 is a fantastic example of how you can't discount people just because they're not on the complex tribe pre-swap, but it was something that always put Tanu just at number 3 or number 2. But at this point, I feel like right now where she sits, considering there's no real negativity in her edit and everyone else has some issues in their edit, I have to put her here at number 1, where she gets narrational content talking about how the Leilani's are flipping on each other. She reads her letter from home first and gets a notable quote about their mother, who they lost, saying to lead with love. She gets positive content outlining her dissatisfaction with the men voting out Jess. But I feel like the main thing that is better about Tanu is that she is involved in it, but she's less over the top than Leilani, which is good. and also she has a relationship set up with most people on the cast, kind of similar to Christopher. So I feel like because of that, I have put her here at number 1. Again, you could do some swapping with my top 3, maybe even top 4 if you want, but I feel like at the end of the day, Tanuki right now satisfies what I want out of a winner in Survivor UK and kind of has the edit that I'm looking for. So here she ranks. But thank you all for watching this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. On screen now is a video where I talk about the issues with the Survivor 45 auction. Again, if you're looking to get into US Survivor, I would highly recommend you check that out because a lot of content on the main channel, put a lot of effort into it, and I would really appreciate if you check it out. But thank you all for watching this video. Peace!